CNN, the Sky News who are talking about here, BBC, Fox News, etc., and they will ensure that they act their own film where they are the hunters and the victors. But bottom line on this is that, look at it this way. America, for so long, has been a homogenic, an empire that has enjoyed unfettered monopoly over that kind of arrogance. And the unilateralism that America for so long has enjoyed has convinced it that probably we are living in a world which has not yet developed into multipolarism. But we are in a multipolar world now. That is why the activities, the American activities, Israel-American activities in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and in the entire Gulf area are activities that are not necessarily going to affect United States of America, but the entire world. And that world will include Russia, will include China, which are actually axes that create the multipolar world that we are talking about. And that is why you begin a war without sufficient intelligence report, the so-called preemptive, the very preemptive strikes that were made, initial ones, even in the middle of diplomatic negotiations. Are we really together on that? See how hypocritical and serious, indisciplined, despicable some of these people can be. In the middle, in total disregard of what UN Charter provides, they don't care.
And they have said so. They are not pretending. They have said that.
And therefore, how do you hope going forward that we can now sit and claim that Iran, by doing what it is doing, because you mentioned it here, kind of the preamble, was it Ocheno, that almost 6 countries, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, all of
Cyprus now?
Yes, Cyprus. That Iran has got capacity to send a missile, a projectile, that leaves Tehran, moves well close to 2,000 miles or kilometers to Cyprus and hits a British base. We are talking about a country that has been under total economic ban and with that kind of capacity, and we don't know how far this is going to go. So therefore, the level of recklessness that a man like Trump and Netanyahu are exuding on the global scale, that they cannot foresee that by beginning a war of this nature, the entire world economically and otherwise is going to get shaken and probably will run into ruins, in my opinion, to say the least, is disgusting.
I wish. You see, these gentlemen are outside the government, so they have the latitude to say the things they want to say. I'm not sure you have the same as Director for External Affairs at the NRM, which is the government. Really. You have the real politics in your hands. You have all these issues that have been raised. So, what is your take on this?
Actually, I have been thinking about that because America says they're the leader of the free world. What is that kind of freedom, Richard, that would not even allow people to talk freely? For example, you are rightly saying that since I'm in government, am I free to say it? Now, if the Americans claim to be the leaders of freedom, then they should have allowed us to be free. But do they? They don't, to the extent that they even influence government or even leaders of the country in areas of appointment, not to appoint members who do not speak their line. And I wonder, is this the country talking of freedom? For example, if a minister or a person or in his conversation like this seem not to toe the line, I wouldn't be surprised if they would want to influence such a thing. So it is a paradox that you're a leader of the free world and you don't want people to be free. Even in General Assembly in New York, if there is a voting position where they have a position they want people to vote on, they even don't want countries to freely vote. Really? You are the leader of the free world? Then why the voting? For example, if there was a resolution on any matter, even now in Iran, if General Assembly was to vote, you could see the way the leaders of the free world are intimidating and shutting people, states, the 193 states, not to freely debate. So it's a paradox, but that is the world we are living in. So your question, whether I'm free or what, I know I can talk my mind, but with a background of that nature, that the supposedly free world doesn't want people to be free, to the extent that they would even influence government to see somebody who is talking freely. Really? Now, my view is that after Second World War, over 40 million people died. And the world said, never again. So the world had resolved that the world would be what is called a rule-based war. Rule-based means countries the whole world over would have a United Nations where countries, like now 193 countries, would discuss and take resolutions. Structures were built like Security Council. Rules they're talking of were conventions, were covenants, which were agreed upon and signed by states. Later on, institutions of courts were developed, international criminal court later, but the Court of Justice was there. So the world had hoped that we are going to live in a rule-based world. But now we are not. And even if you ask anybody, are we happy? The entire world is not happy. America is not happy. Richard, one way of testing happiness is even by mere songs. Do you know that those songs in America which they would sing and they put in photos, girls and boys going to the beach, nobody can sing in America now, because a song is a subconscious thing. A song is like a dream. It's a reflection. It's a subconscious reflection of what is happening in the environment. Not even that kind of song you used to hear of Mariah Carey. Nothing. Because even Americans on tenterhooks. The world is not safe. Another example, if you want to know, the world is not safe even for the Americans. If you meet a Canadian, the accents are similar, and you mistake a Canadian to be an American, he will say, no, I'm not. Please. He will say, I'm not. Because he fears for his safety. But if you met an American and he says, you tell him that you are Canadian, he says, yes, we are one. We are the same. We are brothers. But the Canadian will say, no. So you can see the degree of risk the world has come. And to me, it's purely imperialism. And if somebody doesn't see it, it has no color. Is it surprising, therefore, that attack on Venezuela with the richest oil, attack on Iran with the richest oil, it's imperial quest for wealth, for profit. One time Mugabe was asked that the West was going to overthrow him. Mugabe said, no, never. I can never be overthrown. Then they asked him, how strong is your army? Mugabe said, have you seen oil here? Have you seen oil here for me to be overthrown? So it speaks of the imperial interest. And this has brought a lot of instability. World is not happy at all. The whole world is not safe at all. Everybody knows that. And how far are we going to go? When we had resolved after Second World War that we're going to live in a rule-based war, rule-based world, where we follow the conventions, we follow the covenants ratified by all the states. This is where we are. We are really in that situation. And comes up now, mixed up with the myth that many of our African brothers, especially Christians, don't seem to understand. Comrade Rugarama said about it, that the Jewish state was developed after during the Roman Empire. The Jews scattered all over the world. After Second World War, they believed, because the Jews were around the world and they kind of witty and got wealth, and they were the money lenders. So people like in Germany say, who are these strangers who are now lending us money? Everybody was tied to money loaned by the Jews. So it caused a commotion and many were killed. Some estimate to 4 million, it is not clear. Now, the British Prime Minister called Mr. Balfour made a declaration to create a home. But again, it was imperial interest. So Balfour started it. They first wanted it in Karamoja, and they said it was not viable. They took them to Middle East and grew it up. Now, people don't know that in the Jewish community, once you change religion, you're out. Two prominent Jews wouldn't go back to Israel these days. One, Karl Marx. Karl Marx, the genius, who is believed to be one of the best brains in the world, had changed to Christianity. Today he would not be allowed in Israel. He wouldn't be back. The second person is Jesus, because Jesus started this religion contrary to Judaism. Jesus wouldn't qualify here. And our people think that the Jews are Christian. Never. They are not. In fact, if you're a Jew and you change to Christianity, find yourself out. Now, we are misled into that thinking, and we end up offering moral support and other support subconsciously. So, this is the situation that we should we should be knowing. Therefore, the current situation that is in the Middle East now will lead us, Richard, if the world continues in this line. President Museveni has always said that some people are on the moon and looking at us like insects, and therefore making us vulnerable to their whims. If we continue with this no rule-based world, we are getting back to slavery. The society will be reduced back to slavery, to a time when maybe after hundreds of years we shall have to start another war like the independence struggle. Because the world is going to, at this pace, the world is going to be crushed completely, and maybe time will come when we shall be taken as slaves. And in this case, maybe even not slaves in America. They have the land here, they'll just take our land and make us dig our land for them. Total slavery. So, to every problem there's a solution. Even HIV/AIDS, there is a solution. Only that our mind has not clicked it. It is high time that the world comes together and reverts back to a rule-based world. Otherwise, the world is going to regress from a rule-based world. It will regress completely to a world of domination, to a world of slavery, and it will go for years until again something will come up that people will start afresh, like the way we started fighting for independence. It's so bad. The Jewish element that he has talked about, we can't, if for example Balfour Declaration in 1948 to create the home was to base on the logic that all of us should come back. Some of us, the Achulis, Langis, have not taken even 800 years in Uganda. Would the Langis go back to Ethiopia? Remember, it is 2,000 years since Jesus came. This is 2006. It is 2,000 years. actually 2006 years since Jesus came. And that was the time when the Jews went. Now, here we have been in East Africa, in Uganda. If you read East African history through 1,000 years by Mr. Were, we came around 14 something. We are less than even 1,000 years, even 600 years here. And now if everybody was to go to that logic, the logic that now creates this problem, is everybody going to go back? So it is imperial problem. I was reading somewhere that in Guatemala, a fruit company in America caused the overthrow of a government, because the fruit company, they were growing fruits in Guatemala and their interest was affected. And they overthrew, they made CIA do this, do everything, until a government was overthrown. And Guatemala ended up by military rule for 40 years. So my say, Richard, about the Middle East now is that it is unfortunate that the consensus built after Second World War, that the world is going to be a rule-based war, well, no rule anymore. It is might. Strength determines what you're doing. And we are going to go, if we go on that line, we are returning to slavery, all of us, and it is unfortunate.
There's just a little information, one sentence really.
Yes.
Assuming that a mistake was made in 1948, and they created a special, for that matter, there is biblical and historical perspective under which the Israelis, because there's a difference between Jews and Israelis, but let's say the Israelis were returned to Palestine, because it's Palestinian land. Is it out of sheer arrogance or too much degree of brain power that the Israelis, or the Zionist state of Israel, cannot see that they found people there, and therefore the two-state solution is the best in the circumstances, to the extent that you bring down the entire Gaza Strip, and then you have got a president called Trump who says he's going to put a Riviera in Gaza. Everything is totally gone. And I talk now that you have got almost 65 to 70% effective occupation over West Bank. And now you are going for Iran simply because Iran was creating the capacity to ensure that they create an equilibrium, so that Israel, the state of Israel, does not simply keep on bossing around everybody. We can sit around the table and talk. This is not rocket science. They can win the battle, but they won't.
Something I didn't answer you. You had asked my position in government. I think the position government takes now, Uganda, for us, we are still rule-based. Government has its foreign policy and interest, but also most of the positions we take are positions first as we are bound by international position. For example, if a resolution is taken in UN, we are bound by that if we voted. Even if we didn't, the consensus binds us. If a resolution was taken in African Union, we would be bound by that. And if a resolution is taken in a non-aligned, would be bound by that. So I am yet to see the Minister of Foreign Affairs coming with a position on this matter. But still, I know the position of government wouldn't vary so much, because our national interest, because we are rule-based, our national interest, we have shared it with the partners that we feel we should. So a position, I am sure if it will come out soon, but over and above, those are the parameters that will guide. That we are bound by institutions that we subscribe to, and we are bound by the national interest. We try to marry national interest with the institutions we are collectively bound.
As we wind up this segment about Israel, about Iran, about the United States, about the Middle East, we should also remember that while you have these ones which have escalated this, I'm told there were also attacks in Iran. You know, the Israelis have attacked Lebanon, you know, the region around. Tell me, Banochima, In 5 minutes, where do you think this will end up?
The honest answer is that I don't know. I think, as my colleagues were saying, and I think particularly Comrade Awich, hoping that a new world order post 1945 is being very, very generous to global history, because it wasn't all about the end of the World War. Of course, we say never again, but the imperialist chiefs continued to break up the continent and break up the world. The Cold War, where the Iron Curtain broke in 1989, and I was myself in an exile in UK, and I was feeling very sad, so I'm still traumatized that I was fighting for the liberations in Southern Africa, but here I am, I'm a Ugandan. I don't have the right to freely associate between Kampala and Makerere University simply because of my 10-liter opinion. But here we had a dictatorship here, which world had changed. In any case, at the time, 1990, 89, 90, Kagame, Museveni, Afeki, and Zene Meles were the favorite boys of Anglo-America. And I'm not making political points, and I know I don't want to put my colleagues on the spot, but because it's a global issue, I'm saying, where were the leaders of this region who were then playing poodles to Anglo-America at the time? So my frustration is that Netanyahu, whom I saw 30 years ago emerging as a very extreme right-wing Zionist, terrible guy whom I thought would be unfortunate if ever led Israel. Unfortunately, he did. And at the time, side by side with a very progressive Israeli Prime Minister, eventually, Yitzhak Rabin, who ended up being assassinated, lest your viewers forget, by a Jewish extremist. This is the most decorated Israeli army general in history. Goes on to become a prime minister, recognizes the imperativeness of the two-state solution, the reality of the biblical Abrahamic identity, that through belief in Jesus we become part of that. The question of whether or not there is a Palestine is the word, or you can be a Jew in Palestine, or you want your own Jewish state. We could, as a federal system, go ahead and say the Jewish state of Palestine, whatever the case. Go through those things. They go through the Oslo Accord with the Arafat and everybody else, but the guy is assassinated. And this guy was telling the world that, look, you can only talk to your enemies, but also he said that you can only have a handshake with someone who's willing to offer. That time leading to Oslo Accord, I was so closely convinced that at last we are going to have a settlement in the Middle East. Not forgetting, one, that we had just seen the end of the Cold War, the break of the Iron Curtain, and I thought then Africa was going to be saved from the business of either with the West or with the East, Russia. We went through those ones, lost out on it. On the question of the Jewish thing, it was important to me, lest Ugandans forget. Idi Amin did not overthrow the government of the Republic of Uganda. Your first government. Anglo-America and the Israelis overthrew the first elected government of this country on behalf of their foreign interests, but basically literally using Idi Amin. So we paid the biggest price, lest Ugandans forget that. So I think any death under Idi Amin, we can actually put it in the hands of the Zionist extremist establishment, because I've got Israeli friends and the fantastic, as you know, they're very Jewish privileged, lots of people. Fast forward, we went through those. The Iraqi war, Comrade Awich, I was an average, decent, active member of the British Labour Party, and it was a very difficult thing to go through Parliament and through the membership. Granted, Blair pushed it as a poodle for George Bush, like some poodles these days, but even then, Blair and Bush had the courtesy to try and explain themselves away, and then after that they said, oh, Middle East peace and things like that. You thought never again. I was telling, I think, your program that the largest demonstration ever to take place in Britain in recent times was one in which Jesse Jackson and I attended with Jesse Jackson in 1993. That's the anti-Iraqi war. That's how bad You know, the Western citizens saw their leaders taking them to war. Now Trump is taking that side of the world again into this war. Now, where does it end? Honestly, it would appear that Netanyahu basically wants to obliterate Iran. Why? Because they want to be the supreme powers there. Why is it that, well, knock off Iran, supposed to then go ahead and knock off Turkey, and then after that have client states like yes, Saudi Arabia, yes, others, and then you basically once again controlling the world. The unfortunate thing, of course, for them is that, well, China is quiet, Russia is quiet. We don't know the new form of the world which is going to take, but whatever it is, I already paid today possibly 7,000 shillings more for my fuel in a petrol pump in Kampala than I would. Fellow citizens, lest you forget. And you don't know what else, and there's so many other people, including a friend of mine who's lost an uncle, and people cannot travel to come, including the immediate family members, to travel and come and face it. Because you're asking me where it will end, but I don't know whether Ugandans and Christians recognize that Trump and Netanyahu, who are really, whose interest is not about Israel and America, but really Epstein corner of material interest and extreme capitalist interests, is really one that affects ourselves, including whatever happens to our nursery school children here. I hope that, and pray that Iran remains unbroken, because we need alternative ideology. And in any case, it was merely a revolution that simply say that we don't want a client state that exploits as one family versus another family. But whatever the case, that's a matter for them. But the final thing, though, is Daniel was talking about intelligence. No, give these guys credit. It's not false intelligence. False intelligence was a narrative used to justify. These guys know what they want. The bottom line is they want to control the rest of the world. And it was basically intelligence suggests intelligence. No, that is basically part of the propaganda. It's a sad thing. I hope it settles. I hope it ends quickly. But it would appear that it's not going to end quickly. Why? Because I think increasingly in America, people are waking up. I was very delighted that in Spain, the Spanish guys are simply saying that, no, we're not going to be part of it. I hope Spain pulls out of NATO, and I hope many more nation states pull out of NATO, and I hope American public come to the reality that they're being pushed by Epstein groups and oil oligarchs, and then they simply say, claim back the American note for those guys, and then at the same time, then we shall be able to have a situation in which there's an escalation, and maybe a new world order in which all of us live together, and in which even in Uganda, we can have the courage also to go and walk into City Square and say, down with imperialists, and forward forever with our oil note for interest, and that our leaders will have the courage to be able to stand up to these guys, just like once in a while they stand up to church leaders, which is quite completely unacceptable.
We are going for a break, a short commercial break. And when we come back, we will go away now from the almost never-ending conflicts in the Middle East. There are also global conflicts, really. They are not just Middle Eastern conflicts. And there are so many issues that my panel has raised that sometimes you can have the Baganda call it kamungus. You may have your head spinning. We are going to come back on the ground, and we are going to talk about the contest for speakership. It's interesting, the development over the years, how the contest for the persons who will lead our parliament, how that has evolved. I'm going to put that to my gentlemen in the studio, and we shall also look at the very current ongoings about this. So don't go away. Another interesting hour coming ahead. We'll be back, and thank you for staying with us. It's the bottom line coming your way from Family TV, your Church of Uganda television. Bagmatinka Simbra Richard, I'm still here. Thank you for being with us for the first hour. And in case you've just joined us, we are just starting the second hour of our show, The Bottom Line. In studio, I have Dr. Daniel Rugarama, lawyer, Pan-Africanist, global geostrategic analyst. Oh God.
Thank you.
Advocate, retired major, chief of external affairs at the NRM party, which Paula.
But also advocate. You forget.
You
said advocate to him.
No, for him, I said advocate. In the titles were too many, I chose 3.
Oh. I thought you excluded.
I chose also 3, and one of them is advocate. And the Honorable Ochieno Joseph, UPC ideologue. I should dare not miss that one. Political commentator and Liberal Party activist when you were still away. Labour Party.
Yeah.
Labour Party.
Yeah, so progressive left politics is the future.
You know, one of my listeners elsewhere said we were talking about the right, the left, in the middle, and then he said you were losing me. It seemed like in Uganda we don't have the left and the right.
Let him drop me a note, whoever they are. Let him drop me a note. It's a conversation I'd like to have.
And I told him part of our politics, we may not have that class differences so much. But which, before we went, I promised the viewers that we are going to go now to the speakership race. For some of the people I've spoken to, it's been a very interesting process to see over the years through the different speakers, especially when it started becoming quite contested. We have one underway now. One would, with fear of little contradiction, say, certainly the NRM, with the numbers they have in Parliament, really will determine who the next speaker is. And you being at the Secretariat, we are hearing SEC has decided, SEC has not decided. The Secretariat is behind this one, the Secretariat is behind. There seems to be unnecessary friction around this speakership race.
Well, I don't know whether to call it friction or contradictions or different views. NRM is a family. And as usual, even if you have a family of 5 members, there's bound to be different views, because we are all each individual with each consciousness. So we don't, it is rare that we think in the same way. So, like a family, there's bound to be differences in views. And sometimes they are minor, and sometimes there are major contradictions. So the issue now could have been a contradiction in a family, which is minor in my opinion, about the procedural aspect of arriving at a speaker. At first, internally. Some people were with the views that we should have followed the conventional way, that wait for the members of parliament to be gazetted, wait for them to be sworn in, and when they are fully members, let them express their views, show expression of interest, and then the party decides. Unfortunately, there is no rule which binds the party like that. The party's Bible, in quotes and quotes, is the party constitution. The party constitution does not put that lineup of events. The party constitution says SEC is the supreme body which makes its own decisions, and it can overturn its own decision. It's like Supreme Court, which can depart from an earlier ruling. Therefore, since the party was not bound by the time frame of these events, SEC sat and SEC resolved. It is not a rumor. I have a copy of the resolution. It is not a rumor. So SEC therefore said, we resolve that for, among many reasons, following precedents. For example, the precedents which were followed from the case of His Excellency Sekandi. Sekandi was a deputy speaker until he became a speaker. He finished his terms. Kadaga was a deputy, then later on, after Sekandi, she became the speaker. And all 2 terms. There's this time, Honorable Anite, Right Honorable Anite, has already had 1 term. Of course, we had the unfortunate event of disruption with the death of Olanya. But Anite has had that term, and Tayeba has had the deputy, and now it has to move. So among other decisions of the party, the decision, what shaped the opinion was the precedent. But also many other things like their work record in the term that they were given. So it is now not a secret that the SEC resolution is to the effect that the 2 were forwarded to NRM caucus to be supported. Ideally, NRM caucus would encourage debates in the caucus for people to give their views. But you are well aware that in the movement caucus, which is an institution of the party, by the way, people don't seem to know this. NRM caucus is under the party constitution. It's like Women League of NRM, or Youth League of NRM, or Disability League of NRM. It's just an organ like any other organ. And that is why when it sits as an organ, even me, a director, I attend because I'm attending an organ of the party. And in that organ, there's a chief whip. A chief whip is ideally supposed to be a head prefect of that organization. Whip, like from the stick to beat somebody. Ideally is supposed to whip people to agree on a proposal of the party, subject to discussions. And therefore, one would say it is a foregone conclusion if we take it a resolution forwarded by the chairman to the caucus for adoption. It would mean, therefore, that the party will whip, in quotes and quotes, whip like they whip for beating people. The party will whip the members into accepting a SEC position which is already taken. So, unless there are very exceptional situations that may emerge from the debate, which will go back to SEC to make SEC review its decision, like I had already earlier on said, that SEC can undo its own decision. It can depart from its position, like a Supreme Court can take a position like this. The same Supreme Court can go back and take a contrary. So, unless some exceptional debates come up from the caucus, which will be reverted back to SEC for consideration, but the caucus ultimately is the voters in parliament. And thanks God, as you said, we are the majority. It's like nearly 80% of parliament has stepped aside, which is NRM, held their discussion there, they are whipped into one line, and they come back to the plenary, and the motion will be taken. So that is the position now, and some of us think that it is good for a ruling party to have the speakership than another person in another party. Of course, somebody was challenging that when somebody argued that the other contender, Mao, was not from the party and therefore he could not be supported. Then somebody said, but both of you, you're also newcomers. Both Right Honorable Anite and Tayeba are newcomers from FDC. But the party position of NRM is that NRM is a mass party. It accepts people with minimum qualification, minimum requirement. And being a mass party, unlike other parties like the Communist Party of China, which has 1.5 billion Chinese, but only less than 1 billion are members. The 1.4 billion are not. They are not party members. And you die fighting to be a party member. But for us, it is a mass party. When Right Honorable Anita comes from FDC, Tayeba comes, they become a member. And they have all the rights. They have a right to be voted, and they have a right to vote for others. So they now assume rights in the party, and therefore you can't compare them with somebody outside the party. The same thing, this person which is being objected, if he came today, he would have the rights to vote for others and also a right to be voted. So it is good that a ruling party of a magnitude of NRM holds the post of a speaker among the party ranks. Among other things, it is easier for the party to discipline if there was a need. It is not so easy to discipline in line with party rules and party codes if a speaker came from another party. Suppose a speaker came from another party and starts walking naked, which forum would you submit him to? He would say, I'm not bound by your disciplinary code of conduct. Because as NRM, we have a disciplinary code of conduct attached to the party constitution, such that even if you are in any other position, you may be holding a national position, but you as a party member should reflect the norms, the aspirations, the moral aptitude, the morality of the party. And therefore, I know Congress would say, if she's a speaker, then she's a national property. But does that mean should depart from the morals of the party? No, the party would still call you to order. And it is easier for us to do that if the speaker is one of us.
Bwana Otieno, the previous speaker has inevitably gravitated to you. The NRM is going to take the speakership. The NRM makes its decisions through SEC. So it's a foregone conclusion. If we take that logic, in fact, it means that the next speaker after the Honorable Triple A will be my brother.
Yeah,
he's from the top.
He's gravitated towards me because he knows that while he invokes rule-based governance under NRA, the rules are also set and bring it down to the question of the speakership. Unfortunately, the rules don't apply to the ordinary members of parliament as it should be. The speaker should be elected by all members of parliament.
It will be.
No, on the basis of your description, members of parliament will just be wasting our money on that day, taking extra money and extra tea with big events for parties. Meaning they are farming what SEC would already have been determined. They are farming what SEC would have been determined, and the parliamentary caucus would have said, yes, sir, after all, you've done it. And then whoever the chief whip will also have another free money on that day, pretending to be very busy. Clearly, members of parliament are the people who should have the right to determine who amongst them, should be their chairperson, their presiding officer. Comrade Rich is emphasizing a point which is debatable, but not necessarily that whether or not that speaker comes from the ruling political organization. In any case, in this case, Mao is half NRA. My fantastic sister, Lida Wanyoto, has expressed interest. There is another dancing candidate. That's why Comrade Rich thinks that some of these people can easily go ahead and dance with Gomases, And then even my fantastic friend Chris Barubuzi was hinted to have expressed interest, and another legislator from West Nile has expressed interest. There's a young, fantastic, sharp guy from Bugisu who has indicated that he wants to run for the deputy speakership. So there are many people, and all of them are NRA, in this case, with the exception, of course, of one or two individuals from the other political. So the issue of belonging to NRA is not the issue. The issue is whether or not instructions should come from State House, instructions should come from SEC, instructions should come from any other organ, especially coming from an organ which is not part of the legislature. So automatically it tells you that the Legislative Assembly, is one, not independent, and two, its chairperson is not going to be independent. What members of parliament look for in a speaker, and if they are given the opportunity to come to reach, by the time somebody is actually even considered a candidate for parliament, there should be such men and women of repute, of integrity, of a track record, that the possibility of them dancing in shorts is almost certainly not there, so it wouldn't come. Now, in the extremely unlikely event that it would, because NRA after 40 years, they can surprise you, one of them can emerge who's capable of dancing in shorts. You know, just check somebody like the official lady, the prime minister. So these guys can dance. So it's possible. The rules that guides the manner in which the speaker conducts themselves should not be determined from Chadondo Road, should not be determined from Uganda House, should not be determined from anywhere else. So the Legislative Assembly has its own rules. So meaning that if we are independent and we seem to be trying to build a democratic process, the concern from Komdawich is that if an individual comes from an area and decides to break the rules, the parliamentary processes and procedures should be able to apply and deal with them. But I think it's unlikely. I don't know anywhere in the world where somebody worthy of being a speaker has conducted themselves in such a manner that would be a matter of concern. Once upon a time in Britain, Speaker Baku was considered by the Conservatives, who was their which was his original political party, of being too lenient to the opposition. And so these guys started talking in tongues how to sort of either diselect him. And the best they could do is to say, wait for the next opportunity to make sure that they don't vote for him. That's sort of really all you can do. And that's really is the democracy. Which raises another important point of this campaign, of whether or not we should be having this conversation. To an extent, he's right, but to say that actually, we shouldn't really be discussing the speakership at this time.
Why?
If it was a matter for Parliament. Because all you would be waiting was new Parliament convenes, members knew amongst themselves, and I've seen this and I follow these things around the world. You know, these debates don't take place like this. Parliament is going to be sitting in May. You know, once these guys are sworn in or leading to that, people begin to see who of these can make a good speaker. Who of these is a man of integrity? Yeah, who of these is a woman of integrity? Who of this one did not? Who of this one did not take Mabati money?
We already know who the MPs will be.
That's correct.
And
no, that's true.
And they're already starting to.
No, that's the point. But to begin to say that this is candidate Apex what, and therefore, the central executive NRA pokes its nose on the other place. That's what I'm saying. In any case, actually, in the extreme case, if you don't mind, even in the extreme case that the SEC wanted to do it, my advice to them, of course, they own these things, is that next time, please do it nearer to the time, because actually you're causing unnecessary discord amongst yourselves. But anyway, who am I to advise people who've got 40 years of experience of self-advice?
Dr. Rugaram, you guys are poking your nose into the other side. Why can't you be patient? May is just around the corner.
The present circumstances have presented themselves in such a manner that a question of that nature comes from a quality moderator like Baguma. And you are right. I mean, why? Why now? Now, when you look around, we have had the unfortunate incidences in the past that the outgoing parliament has been painted in extremely bad light. And probably, you may actually, if you dig deep, find that they were not as bad as they have been depicted. Maybe they were not as bad as they have been depicted. But it's very difficult now to wash them to a level where you can say, I'm comparing them and say, for instance, the 6th Parliament, and again, we are talking about things like the parliamentary audit, those reports that were coming up, journalists running around and giving us all manner of things. We are talking about the quality of debate and how many, for instance, other fellow MPs were commenting on their colleagues, and so the level of unseriousness. And therefore, there is a sense in which this debate that is going on in the public spaces has got a lot to do with what has been the shape of the 11th Parliament. They are looking at a situation where they are saying, look, previous speakers were giving accountability, that they no longer have this accountability. These are the allegations which are out there, and we are part of the community out there. That we even don't know. I heard on one of the very big media houses that we even don't know how much a speaker and deputy speaker earn. You see, that during our time, I think that was Odongoto on NBS saying that during our time per sitting, a speaker used to take about 2 million. I have a feeling now it could be 10. You know, so when that comes out, there is a sense in which even if you're a seasoned debater, you are constrained, but to think that, look, I think these positions, speaker, deputy speaker, people are rushing to gazette them, not that they want to offer the very best to this country, but to keep taking these huge amounts of money. Now, I'm really simply laying the ground. I'm not accusing anybody because I don't have these facts. And Comrade Awichi told you here, I would be the last person to do that. We are lawyers. There is no way I can be on such a national television and make such outrageous allegations, and I want the public to take them as truth. No, I'm simply saying that's what is out there, and when you are therefore making submissions against such a filthy background, your life is not at ease. What happens therefore is that we also had our chairman, they call it intermediating, but I don't know if that has been intermediating or maybe guiding. They say at one time when Comrade the late Wapakaburo, he was in the middle of his term, he was recalled and then redeployed. Now, see what happened there? Then they say, you see, when things were getting hot for may his soul rest in eternal peace, Jacob Olanya, MPs were called to State House, and then they were, was that whipping also? They were whipped. they were whipped into line. You see, and therefore, the argument that, wait a minute, even when we have had that, and I have a lot of faith and confidence in Comrade Awich here, is one of the guys I can heap all manner of praises on such a television, because he really merits it. If he said something, even if he was lying, which he has never done to me, there is a tendency to believe him. He said he talked about that he has it on good record, the sex act, and the resolution was made. But I have not had that kind of statement being made out there. Instead, you hear a lot of rumor that there was a meeting in State House, and then so and so was told this and this and this. And this. But I will go with Comrade Awichi's version. I think that is right. And if that is right, as we have agreed, then NRM would want to keep the waters stable. Do you know the amount of chaos if, for instance, the speaker and deputy speaker race? So far, even now, when the people who are coming onto in the context are aware, they are aware of what Comrade Awich, for instance, has just told us and told the world. But they still come out and say, why did you close it? Who told you to close it? We are also there and we want to participate. So I think to keep the waters and the flow of the party, they said no, let's keep in line. Probably, I think what they are waiting for, because of the very heavy influence of the chairman of the party, there is, I don't know, is he the one who chaired that second meeting? No, if he's the one who chaired that second meeting, then Comrade Maguma.
It's out of your hands.
I think I beg to close myself.
Are you saying it is like I said?
No, but you see, that's what I wanted to bring to.
Unless you have something else to ask me.
No, that is what I want to bring to Director Awish.
Yes.
And I want to pick it from where Honorable Cheno left it. You see, perhaps 60 or so % or more of this parliament was not re-elected. And this is a pattern we have seen. It wouldn't be the first one. Now, the parliamentarians for 2026 to 31 have not been gazetted, have they? Have not been sworn in. So what the NRM organs have done is to go and in a very, because you have not involved them, they're involving the old crop, in a very undemocratic, quote unquote dictatorial way, imposed candidates on them. Why are they not allowed to say, we think these guys should be our leaders?
Yeah. Here it is that I had said the constitution of the party is the guiding instrument.
You said Bible, quote unquote.
And the constitution doesn't say wait until those procedures. The party is doing its normal transactions so it can decide anytime. However, on the question of input by the caucus, that is why I'm saying it has been pushed to the caucus for discussion. Although I saw also the word adoption is there, either discussion and adoption or for adoption, but normally it will be with discussions. And therefore there wouldn't be such a claim of a denial of a right to give their input, a denial to participate. If it was given by bypassing the caucus, or for example taking it direct to the plenary, you'd say the caucus have been denied. But the caucus have been given chance, they will discuss it. And that's why I had said that in very and rare decision that they would push it back to SEC. So there's no fear of saying that the members, the MPs of 2026, 2031 have been sidelined. No, it has been pushed to them. Now, about the influence of the chair, there isn't so much fear about the influence of the chair because the NRM democratic system works under a system called democratic centralism. Democratic centralism means you have discussions for all and freedom to give opinion, but it is centered also on the chair. And this democratic centralism, we used it in NRA throughout the war until and during the NRA struggle. Democratic centralism. Even if within the army we had democratic centralism. You could be surprised that even the agenda item, this one, Rugarama, to come on the agenda item of SEC, it wasn't the chairman generating. The chairman democratically welcomed an agenda of this nature. So this could maybe go a long way to explain that the influence of the chairman on this matter is not as perceived, because it didn't author the agenda, it didn't generate the agenda. The agenda came from members. The only thing that you fault the chairman is maybe if he had not swayed the meeting to stay it or to reject it, or if you want to use the word veto, if he did not veto. But being a Democrat as he is in SEC, which Congress may not believe to me
course
that the chairman is democratic in SEC. He chose not to veto it. But please let us note that there is no overbearing influence of the chairman on this, in that the agenda didn't come from him, and he chose to let the discussion proceed and wait for consensus. He didn't veto the idea. Now, on the decisions, like a congressman said that SEC as an institution, or the chairman, is influencing parliament. No, we are not influencing parliament as an institution. Our decisions only stop at our party members. All parties in parliament have caucuses, including UPC. UPC has a UPC caucus in parliament with their chief whip. DP has a DP caucus with their chief whip. Or a NUP has a caucus with their chief whip. It is known. So what is wrong with NRM having its caucus with a chief whip? Have we ever bothered to know what UPC discusses in their Congress? You know the whip of UPC, at least in the current parliament, okay? Or you know the whip. You can go on record and check. All the parties have their caucus and their whip. So we don't go into what they discuss in their caucus. So for us, we discuss matters that affect the party members, so that by the time they go back, at least these are people who, and that's how a multi-party system works. So when they go to parliament, they will therefore exercise their individuality, but also factoring the party position. All parties in Ugandan parliament have caucuses, and all parties in parliament have their chief whip, party whips. In fact, it has even gone to the region where this parliament even has regional whips. Northern region whip, Eastern region, and Western, and so on and so forth. So our decision binding on our party members has nothing wrong with that. Now about, Comrade Rugarama says about the merits and demerits of the parliament. There's so many schools of thought. I don't want to go into it, but next time maybe we would have about the merits and demerits. People are talking of the big size, they think it is big. People are talking of procedures of accessing parliament, a lot of use of money, and what extent it affects the quality. People are talking of the emoluments, how they decide it on their own. So on the aspect of parliament per se, is a big debate around there. But for now, I've chosen to restrict myself to procedural aspects of choosing a speaker and the role of the party there too, which I think so far our party has done right. We have not stampeded them in a way that our constitution doesn't bind us to the roadmap of the party. We can discuss anything which we deem fit in our party, and it so happens that this idea was deemed fit in SEC.
Bwana Ochem, what is wrong with democratic centralism, which is applying in this case?
I'm actually very grateful that Comrade Which defined it in such a manner that it makes it so precise. There's actually clearly not democratic, that in the case of NRA, under this very important matter, that it is what the chairman says. In the event that our president of UPC, which will be, and also president of the Republic of Uganda, God willing, and such a matter arises, and it came to me through a whatever organ of the party, I would reject it. But if I have to take a position, I would instruct and direct, and I know that's what Milton Obote would do, say that wait for Parliament, the new Parliament to assemble, let parliamentarians determine. The nearest you could do, you could infer your wishes, whom you think should be the person. It's extremely undemocratic. As I said, Parliament is an independent body and an independent organ. And Comrade Wish to suggest that because members of Parliament are your members, and so therefore you have influence over them. You and I have been in spaces where we have been lamenting about Mabati. And you've not instructed that these Mabati thieves in NRA be arrested. You know, Comrade Baguma, This debate should be looked at from the perspective of the record of the last assembly. Anita Mongi is a decent lady, somebody whom I know personally. Thomas almost qualifies as a friend. These are decent people. But the track record of the National Assembly in the last 5 years, particularly when it comes to the questions of corruption, property, and bulldozing, generally, includes some of the things that my colleagues have raised here, are such that today, maybe if we were to have this conversation, we would be saying, how do we redeem the image, as I think Daniel seems to suggest, or how do we make it better? That's one. Number two, the apparent influence of the executive. Mr. Museveni has been so very directly involved managing Parliament, very openly, we know, and as I said, in a manner in which does really not augur well for Parliament as an institution. The Parliamentary Commission itself has been so much mired into this question of corruption, including this thing of gifts to commissioners. Nuvambi, you need to take a pay rise after you've made you hit your target, whatever that target is. The debate today should really be about whether or not and how we're able to redeem this and return a sense of stability to Parliament. I wish we were discussing who is the next likely Speaker of Parliament who's going to bring Parliament together, who is going to fight corruption, who's going to make sure that they stand up to the executive. And standing up to the executive, my two colleagues, you don't have to be a non-member of the party. You don't actually have to be somebody who undermines. Standing is basically checks and balances. Somebody who says that, look, these figures don't add up. Our possibly party priorities, talk infrastructure. We can't accept, we can't pass this when we know that we've got a burgeoning budget deficit. We need to refocus our priorities. You are giving us these bills and legislations, but I think the biggest priority is to jiggle the country to make sure that we are ready for a post-Trump and post-Netanyahu world. At the moment, the amount of deficit we have is huge. The size of Parliament is huge. The level of unemployment is huge. The kind of fiscal programs and priorities that we would otherwise be wanting to discuss and have, questions of infrastructure, building up on some of these global priorities, the conflicting situations in which we are. Those are where we need big thinker individuals to come and say, not only as the role of Parliament to do that, but the organ that checks the executive, the organ that makes sure that the judiciary does its job, and the organ that makes sure that whatever money that we're able to mobilize and organize are able to be delivered. These guys took over a government when we had just had a budget surplus. For your record, I know your producers are young guys who do research and they would like to be able to hear this. Do you know that by 1985, despite the endless atrocities around Kampala, we had a budget surplus of $30 million US. Make a calculation of what $30 million US in 1985 would be equivalent to today. And that is just months to the Okello regime, with the economy projected to be growing at 6%. 40 years later, these guys are praising that number. I'm saying that to tell you that, well, these are sort of the contextual priorities. But then to look at the situation in which we're discussing speakers, and we're looking at bribes. Even my young good friend Taibu was saying that, well, you're bribing yourself to go into SEC by paying 5 billion shillings. What is it that you're going to do in SEC? So no wonder Trump and Netanyahu are busy playing us up. Because here, those of us and our leaders who should be able to organize us, and an institution called Parliament that should be able to check the executive, check the judiciary, and maybe check you guys in the fourth estate to make sure that, well, they provide us with the legislation that will be able to be applicable so that we're able to mainstream our country. And doing exactly the wrong thing. No, I think it's a bad decision for the executive who have got involved. It's a bad decision in terms of bad timing. And part of my concern is that we could have well go ahead and have Donald Thomas and Anita continue. That's not a problem. I'm simply saying the timing and the spirit of doing it. By the way, it's really, really bad politics for freshers in the Parliament. Basically, the point is freshers in Parliament have been told that, I'm afraid, come May, you're going to have to go and toe the line and vote for so and so, and that so and so is going to be a head prefect. It just does not work like that, and it shouldn't.
Dr. Rugarama, the people spoke and made a decision on who will lead them for the next 5 years. At that level, the NRM clearly got the percentage, the presidential candidate, but also the members of parliament. And the NRM works in a certain way, and they have made a decision that whether you are sworn in or not, whether you are gazetted or not, when you come, your choice is already made. The speaker and deputy speaker are here. See, there's nothing wrong with that. The decision is already made.
No,
Yeah.
Maguma, I don't think so. By the way, and colleagues here will agree with me, even if there is such a position taken by SEC, you can have rebels. People can, even NRM, what would you do, for instance, if members just decided to vote otherwise? You have whipped them, but they have refused it.
There is a whip.
So anyway, that is for argument's sake. In majority of the cases, when there is a functional political party, like I want to believe NRM is, and they have been properly whipped, the truth of the matter, and especially when they are, because they have immense respect for their chairman, they will usually toe the line. That, like again, Comrade Ocheno said, there would be no problem, by the way. There would absolutely be no problem with our sister AAA and our brother Thomas Tayebwa retaining their positions, because they are not the first and they will not be the last. I think we are now just looking, we are kind of critiquing the procedure. Now, the academics, the academicians, the philosophers, these high-level politicians that want to, the shoes we want to wear, you cannot stop us from asking these questions. But at the end of the day, the world outside there, you know, we have got a lot of contamination in our politics. We like talking politics all day, everything, you know, and the assumptions we have outside there are immense. You don't know what is being talked about when it comes to the rest of the, no wonder you have it here as a topic. There is quite a lot of debate outside there about whether AAA and Thomas Tayebwa are going to retain these positions. There is a lot of debate that, for instance, Norbert Mao has been fronted, that there are some sections, and the last key is with the chairman, NRM. But speaking for myself, I was amazed, because Senior Comrade Norbert Mao is a seasoned lawyer, he's a seasoned politician, appearing on one of the programs on one of the media houses. He said, these people who are not supporting me now, they will see when I am being sworn in. And I was like, this Senior Comrade is very sick. Where does he get the energy? Well, because he could have as well have said if, but he said when. This guy, he said as a lawyer, maybe there is something behind this, you know. So therefore, there is this sense in which the population outside there, when we have all these multiplicity of problems, like we do, be it in economics, be it in business here and there, the social status of people, how they are living, and so many other things that bother us as a third world country. The last you would want to see is a parliament that is suspected of participating or enabling corruption, which we seem to have tagged to the outgoing parliament. And therefore, every business that was conducted there, and the reason as to why, by the way, you will find some sense of this fever kind of in the public, is because of the media outpowering against the outgoing parliament, to the extent that so many good
maybe
things.
just media exposing the realities of the
Yeah, that too, that there's that possibility. But you see, when we go, it is Comrade Awich that was talking about that let me restrict myself to this and this.
Yes,
because you see, when you go to, for instance,
I must say that because we have the last 5 minutes and we need to share it.
how many bills, for instance, were passed? If we, you know, how many bills? What is the quality of the bills that were passed, and in what time frame? The targets that they gave themselves. But when you have again the international community sanctioning some of our people, like they did to AAA, then you have this. Our heads keep buzzing. Not even asking ourselves, this sanctioning, who are they? Under what terms did they sanction? Who are the other people they have sanctioned before? Are they anything to believe? After all, they sanctioned this, I mean, the whole body like ICJ sanctioned, they have indicted Netanyahu, but the man is moving around and even causing more mayhem. You see, when we have America and this other one, they do what they do.
So as you conclude, this is the question I want all of you to answer. Is SEC in order or not?
In doing what it has done. Yeah, first of all, I want to believe that they have not broken any of the rules which they have set for themselves. So to that extent, they are in order.
Okay. Is SEC in order?
Absolutely not. An extraordinary dictatorship. But that said, this is an NRA regime that is governed by the High Command. That's what has been happening. All these other things, in any case, I didn't really want to stretch it from there. Agencies like Parliament and the other arms are basically, you know, enabling arms of the establishment. And under aims and objectives of the NRA revolution, they say it so anyway, that the High Command will always be in charge. So that is basically what we're seeing. But it's unfortunate because I would have hoped that the incoming legislators would have been given the opportunity to make the decision against the backdrop of some of what Daniel is suggesting in terms of the track record of the previous parliament, some of the members and leaders in that assembly, see what some of the new and young blood may be coming to be able to put the, maybe new blood, meaning fresh blood, with this, the young in that sense, and make sure that big things, including some of these other things, the eliminations. I think considering the state of our economy and considering some of the spaces where some of us have been coming from when you go up country, and then you come back and you find that a very privileged legislator getting 2 million shillings for seating, whatever kind of, this is a change that ought to be made. And you know what? These are changes that should and would normally cause revolutions in normal democracies and normal countries, but completely out of order.
Which?
First of all, I concur with what Comrade Rugarama said. The SEC is very much in order to do whatever they did, because they have not broken any provision. A provision broken should be clearly stated. But I'd like to answer in the few seconds that he asked me what would the party do if the members refuse to toe party lines. It's like criminal law. You know criminal law, Richard, the law.
I am a journalist, I don't know.
Yes, that's what I want to tell you the basic. Criminal law punishes your head, your mind, not what you have done.
Yes.
Mens rea.
The intention.
It is not what you have done that is criminal, it is what you have thought. For example, we live with the body of Karamoja. If in the past Karamojong thought cassava were growing as wild plants, if you arrested the Karamojong who has uprooted cassava full sack and you take him to court, and he tells court, I thought it was not anybody's thing. Unless the prosecution comes and says this man used to cut sugarcane in Kakira, he was seeing the cassava planted in Kakira is lying, the court will say he has not committed offense. Because by the time he was pulling the cassava, possibly he was saying, he did it. Now, in the case of the party, we have a code of conduct attached. Your actions are judged by the code of conduct. Among the range of issues is, whatever, if you, particularly the ringleaders, if you are seen to have disobeyed the party, it would affect your possible flag bearership in future. It will count against you. Or even if you identified, you will not be fit to be trusted with another party position. There are many party positions, like leaders of committees and commissions in parliament.
And what about,
others.
What about if you brought the party into disrepute?
So,
it's
same thing.
still the same
So
thing.
they are still the same thing.
So
So
that's what they can do.
there are a range of things the party can do, especially when the party judges you with the code of conduct, and clearly it has to be matched that your conduct violated these specific provisions. The penalty, leave it to the party, but there are a range of it.
All right. Thank you so much for staying with us. The Speaker is the Speaker the property of Parliament, the property of the party, or the property of Uganda, or the property of all the three? How should the Speaker be chosen? Which organ should have the most influence? You are the voter, you are the Ugandan. These are the debates that you should be having. Part of the panel thinks for sake to go and decide who should be voted Speaker, because they will eventually be voted Speaker because the party has a majority in Parliament. The panelists, some of the panelists say that's in order, the others say that's not in order, and that's the bottom line. What is the truth? You also have to be part of the decision. You also have to be part of the discussion. And thank you so much for staying with us, dear viewer. Family TV, the bottom line. Bwana Joseph Ocheno, thank you so much for being part of us.
Pleasure.
Bwana Awish Paula, thank you so much for staying with us. And Dr. Daniel Rugarama, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. Bagumatika Simere Richard, I wish you a good night. Join us again on Wednesday, 9 p.m. for yet another edition, and please don't go away from Family TV. I thank the management and my production team. Thank you so much for doing a wonderful job. Have a good night.